Ava. So much for BSing our way out of this one, Alex said, shaking his head. I gave him a look. Did you really think your people could lie your way out of this whole situation? Well, if there's one thing that humans excel at, it's lying to each other. We've been doing it for as long as we have had sapience, and we've gotten pretty good at telling people what they want to hear. I blinked at him. I don't think that anyone is going to want to listen to you guys since you've kind of been lying about everything for as long you've been in the galactic community. He waved his hand dismissively before speaking. I'm sure that all we need is one good speech explaining all the reasons that we did this, and it'll all blow over. That is, except for the couple of species that will probably declare war on us or something like that. I shook my head. You must have some good speakers if you think that your species can just make one speech and suddenly everyone will be okay with how much misinformation you've spread. Alex shrugged. Well, at this point, there's nothing I can really do right now, so worrying about it is a waste of my brain power that could be used trying to get this mech working. And with that, he went down his little elevator thing and made his way over to the closet, where he pulled out a series of tools and put them in a backpack. What are you doing? I asked. Well, I have about 45 minutes before I need to pick up that battery and wheelchair from the fabricator, so I need to get the mech itself ready for repairs, pulling out what's left of the original battery so that I can replace it when the time comes, he said as he started to climb the mech. I nodded. I suppose that makes sense, I said. Do you need any help? He sighed as he tried to unscrew a tiny screw to dislodge a piece of battery and shrapnel. Yeah, actually I will. The battery itself is going to be about twice as big as me, and we usually have automated repair bays in our ships, so I will probably need some help, he said before mumbling under his breath so quiet that I could barely hear him. Good thing I'm an engineer. He finally dislodged the piece of shrapnel and pulled out the battery piece that was attached to it. He looked at it for a second before tossing it onto the floor. Once I get this thing up and running, I'll start cleaning up the mess that I make. And with that, we got to work. We would end up spending most of the time pulling out the damaged components from the mech, with the occasional pop culture reference coming from Alex. Of course, I didn't know what he was even talking about because the most I knew about human culture was the very little that humanity even gave us in the first place. He seemed a bit crestfallen when I first said that, but got increasingly irritated until he finally just pulled up a video on his holoprojector and left it on for me to view, as we continued to pull apart the mech where it was broken. We had just finished as I heard Alex's communicator go off. He looked at it, looked back up to me and said, I just got a message that the fabrication is done. Could you get the battery and wheelchair for me? I would go with you, but I really don't want to get on the captain's bad side right now. I rolled my eyes. Of course you start following the rules after you cause an incident that could throw your species into war. He chuckled. Gotta start somewhere. Oh, and can you tell the crowd of about 20 people to stop lurking outside my door? I opened the door just a crack. Sure enough, there were about 20 people of various species lurking outside Alex's cabin. I closed the door and turned to him. How did you know how many people there were out there? I asked. Don't tell anyone that I told you this, but when I got here I put a motion sensor outside, so I know if anyone's trying to sneak up on me, he said, still focusing on his communicator. All right, don't get kidnapped while I'm gone, I said, jokingly. I will make no such promises, he said back. And with that, I opened the door back up and stepped out into the hall. I did a head count once again, finding Alex's count to be accurate. They all seemed to be waiting there, expecting something to happen. One of the group, who I clocked as Krark, a Chupir, one of the few species in the galaxy that is capable of flight with their wide wingspans, stepped forward. Is Alex okay? We heard what happened, and just wanted to make sure he's okay, he said. I gave a heavy sigh. We both know that you couldn't care less if he got hurt. You just want to see if the rumors about Alex are true, I said, as I tried to muscle my way through the crowd. Well, yeah, that is true, he responded. But we also want to know if he's okay. That was a nasty breach in his suit that he had. I stopped and looked back at Krark. Well, he's okay now, that's all you really need to know. And can you leave him alone? He's already gone through enough today without other people harassing him into showing his face when he doesn't want to. You never cared about his well-being before this, so stop pretending to care now. There were a few mutters of acknowledgement before the entire crowd finally dispersed. I sighed and started making my way over to the fabricator. Occasionally I would get stopped by various people trying to get the latest from me about Alex, and I told them the same thing that I told everyone else. You'd think that they would have other things to gossip about, but no, they must focus on the one thing that they really shouldn't be. If only I hadn't been so nosy in the first place, this probably never would have happened. I was snapped out of my introspection as I finally made it to the fabricator bay. I stepped in to see a fellow Cochelet manning the computer where they managed the incoming orders. They looked up at me and the crest of their feathers popped up in a greeting. "Hello there, how can I help you?" I popped up my crest in greeting as well. "I'm here to pick up a few things that a friend had fabricated. It was a battery and a wheelchair." They nodded knowingly and went to the back of the bay and pulled out a small box on top of the wheelchair. "It was a bit of an odd request, but hey, those Terrans are odd ones," they said. They seemed to get a glint in their eye as they looked me over. "So, how long have you known the Terran for?" I snorted. "The same amount of time as anyone else, but I did get to talk with him more often since we were both on the security team." "So did you know?" they asked. "Of course I didn't. The Terrans are so secretive, and for good reason too, considering how much the crew has been harassing him since everything happened." It's hard to imagine that they were lying about so much. It really makes you wonder what else they could be lying about. I pondered that for a moment before responding. "Alex has been nothing honest and kind to me with the things that he can talk about. I trust him," I said. "Yeah, but how do you know that he really is?" they asked. I thought back to the ready room and the emotion that Alex showed. "I just know, okay?" "All right, I hope that you know what you're doing," they said, doubt evident in their voice. With that, I collected the battery and wheelchair and started back to Alex's cabin. Luckily, I didn't run into any more people trying to get the latest on our resident Terran. I finally walked into the cabin and saw him sitting on the bed looking at his communicator. I immediately knew something was wrong as he was a couple shades lighter than I had seen him previously. "What's wrong?" I asked. He looked up at me and said, "Someone just declared war on us."
Venus. 1 IED. That's all it took for the entire galaxy to fall to chaos. In the wake of our secret getting out onto the internet, governments across the stars have been clamoring for some kind of explanation to the pictures that have been circulating. It had only been an hour. I had requested an emergency meeting of the Galactic Community's Senate from the current Speaker of the House, which had fortunately been approved and was going to happen in less than 10 minutes. It was my hope, along with the hope of United Terra, that I could get the various nations of the galaxy off humanity's back, and to hopefully have the galaxy respect us. I had been cleared to share certain information with the Senate, but was told that under no circumstances was I to reveal the position of our solar system. Not like it'll stop any of those aliens out there from trying to get that information. I thought bitterly as I sat at my desk on top of the desk that my mech was sitting at. I stared up to it, lost in thought. I wonder what would have happened if we just introduced ourselves to aliens without the mechs. Would we have had the same results? I stayed like this for a bit until I was shaken out of my introspection when the door to my office was opened. I saw the familiar faceplate of one of my guards. "We have 5 minutes, ma'am, and it's going to take us 3 to get there." I nodded. "I'll get suited up in a minute." I stood up from my desk and collected the tablet that had my talking points on. I sent a message to my mech via my implant, and it lowered its hand down to my level so I could stand on it with ease. Once I was secure, it lifted me up to the cockpit where I sat down. The automated mech was a recent innovation, using AI that we hadn't even considered using since the uprising that was put down almost 2 centuries ago, despite the cold feet that people got whenever AI was mentioned. To counteract this, it still relied heavily on the neural commands of the user to function as intended. Humanity had learned its lesson once and wasn't keen on repeating it. With a sigh, I closed myself into the metal coffin and stood up from the desk, made my way to the door, and opened it. The first thing that I saw was my 2 guards flanking the doorway, with weapons that were large even in comparison to the mechs wielding them. The second thing that I noticed was the hallway. Although the room that I was in was designed by humans, just scaled up like everything else, the hallway was a different story. It was designed by the Mudillo, a species that looked rather like your average star-nosed mole that you would find on Earth, except for being 10 stories tall. There was not a single sharp angle in the entire hallway, with the exception being the doorways. And as I was escorted through the facility by my guards, that summarization of Mudillo architecture continued to be true. We finally walked into the Senate chamber, a massive bowl-like structure that was close enough to the surface of the planet to get natural sunlight to shine through the glass ceiling. Every chair was occupied by a representative from every species in the galactic community, except for one. That one was for me. The room was practically buzzing with conversation as we entered, but all of that was immediately silenced as soon as the aliens noticed us. I silently made my way to the seat, where I sat down and waited for the meeting to start. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me. The representatives around me were trying to get my attention, but that was quickly shut down by one of my guards giving them a single glare. Thankfully, the meeting started quickly enough, as signaled by Buzraz, the Mudillo representative, walking to the center of the room and tapping the microphone a couple of times to get everyone to focus on him instead of me. He gave me a brief nod before starting. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Community's Senate, I call the 5th emergency session of the Senate to order. The first and only business for this session is brought to us by the Terran representative. Representative Rowe, you have the floor. I stood up and made my way over to the podium at the center of the room. I cleared my throat as I started to speak. Esteemed members of the Senate, I come before you to address the rumors that have surrounded Terrans for the last hour or so, as images have circulated the internet claiming what Terrans look like under the suits that we wear. And with that, I pushed the microphone down to the lowest it could go, and I opened the hatch. I squinted as I stepped onto the open hand of the mech to the gasps and spirited whisperings of the other representatives. The whispering only increased in volume as I was lowered and stepped onto the podium and up to the mic. As you can see, the rumors are correct. These mech suits that we have made has made it possible to walk with our galactic peers. I took a deep breath. Now, I'm sure that you all are wondering why. Why would United Terra lie to the galactic community for over 2.5 years now? If they were lying about this, then what else could they be lying about? To answer those questions, I will ask you a question. If you had spent your entire history wondering if aliens existed, how would you feel if you found out that aliens did exist? I paused for a moment. Then imagine for a moment how you would feel if you found out that the smallest alien out there was easily 5 times larger than you. Keep in mind you have no idea if they view size or lack thereof as weakness, or if they will even view you as sapient in the first place. Humanity hid what we were because we didn't know how you aliens would react to us in the first place. The lies end today, however. In the spirit of transparency with the galactic community, after this meeting, anyone who is curious about who we are and why we do the things that we do can find a web page detailing Terran history, physiology, and psychology. The whispering reached the level of a dull roar, prompting the Mudillo representative to speak up. We will have order in this Senate. The Terran ambassador still has the floor. I nodded in appreciation again. And now I have a warning to give. Everyone looked shocked. To the representative of the Yalea Conclave, I turned so that I could look them in the eye. You declaring war on United Terra and her people will not go unpunished. I promise you that when we are done with you, you will learn to fear those that you think you can take advantage of. I turned back to the rest of the Senate. And to the rest of you, the lack of an official response from any of your governing bodies has left United Terra disappointed. To you, we issue an ultimatum. United Terra has been a prolific trade partner with most of the species here, along with providing most of the foreign aid to those that need it. Unless your government officially condemns the actions of the Yalea Conclave and introduces sanctions against them, United Terra will withdraw all trade and foreign aid from your respective nations. And with that, the entire room erupted into chaos as I sealed myself back into my mech.
Alex. I sat there in stunned silence as the room descended into chaos. That Venus woman really did play the nuclear card right out of the gate. I looked up to Ava to see that they were equally shocked. Well, if I thought politics was boring before, I certainly don't think that now, I said with a chuckle.